Russian President Vladimir Putin has agreed to halt attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure for 30 days. The proposal was put forward by US President Donald Trump during what was described as a frank call between the two sides. The lengthy phone discussion also saw the leaders agree that war needed to end with a lasting peace. The White House adding the negotiations aimed at achieving just that will begin immediately in the Middle East. Ukraine has already agreed to a 30-day truce that would end long-range missile attacks from the air and sea. Moscow has still not backed that proposal. Well, let's speak to France 24's Catherine Norris-Trent, who joins us live now from Odesa. Catherine, good to have you. Just bring us up to speed with what the two leaders had to say.
Good evening, Yinka. Vladimir Putin, in a long phone call with Donald Trump, has agreed to a 30-day cessation in striking energy infrastructure. Now, the Russian media, the Kremlin, has put out that Vladimir Putin has already given that order to the Russian military. But it does stop short of a full ceasefire, a full and unconditional ceasefire, which Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, has already agreed to, and which the White House, it's believed, was hoping to try and get from Vladimir Putin. Nonetheless, Putin agreed to continue negotiations. The two presidents also agreed on a prisoner exchange, which is due to take place tomorrow. On the 19th of March, 175 prisoners, including 23 severely wounded Ukrainians, are due to be handed over. And they're due also to start negotiating a cessation of hostilities in the maritime route in the Black Sea, you know, that very crucial route from here in Odesa, where we've seen, of course, in previous years, much negotiations about getting grain exports out of the country, vital to Russia's economy. So it seems like, even though it's been hailed as epic and historic by Russia and also lauded by President Donald Trump, that it's the first step in negotiations. We are also hearing that they want to work towards a ceasefire which would freeze the combat along the current contact line. And this is where things could get extremely tricky, because going into these negotiations, the Ukrainian president's chief of staff had said that Ukraine would in no way concede on recognizing the areas that Russia has seized in Ukraine as Russian territory. So this was clearly a very long phone call, 2 hours if you listen to the Kremlin, 90 minutes according to the White House. And it was the first time the American president had spoken to Vladimir Putin, this time in his presidency. So significant indeed. But if you look down in the detail, it wasn't as much as the Americans had been pushing for, and it wasn't as much as Zelensky has already signed up for.
And of course, the Ukrainians would have obviously been hoping for a lot to come out of that call. Just tell us about how Ukrainians have been reacting to the call between Trump and Putin today.
So we're monitoring the situation closely so far. No official reaction from Volodymyr Zelensky, who is in Finland for talks there on Tuesday with officials there about beefing up their defenses and how they can further cooperate together. Officials here, I think, still pouring through the details of what's been put out by both the White House and the Kremlin. We spoke to Ukrainian people on arrival in Ukraine about their expectations for these peace talks. Obviously, people here with a lot of fear, anticipation, concerns about what the future will hold. This is obviously an existential question for their country. And of course, as you'd expect, opinions are divided, in public at least. We spoke to one military official who said he thought it was a mistake, in fact, to agree to an unconditional ceasefire, and that he thought Ukraine should carry on fighting with or without American help, however realistic that may be. But other people you speak to are clearly very war-weary and just want the fighting and the death toll to stop rising, basically, because Ukraine has been at full-scale war since its invasion for more than 3 years now. And so perhaps the very taboo issue of compromising on ceding some territory, even if it's never officially recognized, is something that is in some Ukrainians' minds. And that remains highly controversial, of course, and something that's very politically difficult to admit. But there are different reactions around the country. Of course, Ukraine having a bit of a manpower crisis, trying to mobilize troops to get to the front line, and reliant on foreign aid, constantly calling for more. So, we'll see where this ceasefire, this cessation, initial cessation could lead, whether there are further talks, but, mixed expectations, doubts here in Ukraine over the sincerity of the phone call that was held today as well.
Catherine, great to get that update from you. Thank you so much for that. Catherine Norris-Trent reporting there live from Odesa. Well, France 24's